Rauscher here. Today we're going to be talking about Stony Hill Nugget number 249. Wow, getting close to 250. This one is entitled The Most Important Change We Can Make and How We Think. 5 big ideas out of the paper. First, if we're going to change the world, then there's an old adage that says what we've really got to do is we have to change ourselves. And that means we have to change the way we think, which then changes the way we see the world. And once we change ourselves and the way we think, a miracle happens. The whole universe changes. Everything changes when we change. Okay? So it's really a pretty cool concept. Let's start with key idea number 1. And this whole nugget is going to be basically about how we raise and educate our children. Now, obviously, if we're going to educate our children differently, then we have to learn how to think differently so that we do a good job being parents and educators for our kids. But everything I'm talking about here is important for the education of our children because they're going to be the next generation and they are going to have some problems if we continue on the path that we're on. In fact, they'll probably have problems even if we don't, because a lot of the changes and a lot of the impacts of global climate change take a lot of years to both manifest and to then dissipate. Okay, so it's going to be really important that our kids be pretty solid thinkers in terms of how to look at reality and how to deal with the real world. So this is going to be a primary focus in this nugget, is how do we educate our children? And the basic concept is how do we get them to think about the 13.7 billion years it took for them just to exist. Okay? That's a story of awe, and amazement, and mystery, and wonder. And if we can convey that to children as a beginning, it's kind of a foundation to their education, then we won't probably have to spend quite so much time helping them learn how to make a living inside a broken economic system. I'll get to that in a minute. But basically what this first point is that if we can help them begin to see the big picture, then the economic system that's creating a lot of our problems in the world in terms of global climate intensification and change, these will begin to make more sense to our children because they're the ones that are going to have to come up with some really good solutions. Okay, second big point. Our survival as individuals and as a species is totally interdependent on the natural world. Now, that seems like a really logical thing to think about, right? We depend on the natural world, but we don't think that way. And this nugget is about how to change that thinking. So to begin with, we're going to focus on the fact that our actual survival is we're interdependent with the natural world. If the sun didn't exist or wasn't shining and plants weren't green with chlorophyll and all the rest of it, you wouldn't have any food to eat. You wouldn't survive. So just the simple thing of having the sun come up every day is crucial to our survival. Okay. Now, given that reality, and it is a simple reality, but what's behind it isn't quite so simple. And that is the concept of negative feedback, or the law of limits. And what I mean by that is that the entire natural world is in balance. And it's balanced because when things start to get out of whack, then there's a negative feedback. There's a feedback that pushes against that change. Okay? For example, a negative feedback in and our communication with other people might be, we think we're always right, right? That's what our primitive ego likes to believe. Our beliefs are right, they're truth, and we know what's right, and we know how things should be. Well, the minute we put out our thesis or our opinion, guess what? Somebody else is going to come along and say, well, I don't think you're right. I think you got that all backwards. I think you got it wrong. So what they're doing is they're providing negative feedback to our need to be right. Perfectly normal. Without the feedback, something very, very dangerous happens. If we get, and this is thinking about political parties, for example, if we get too much push in this direction and no pushback, and that happens when we get ideological thinking and people who think that they've got absolute truth nailed down, they keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and pretty soon what we're doing is we're moving into exponential growth, and that heads for infinity. So if there isn't a pushback or negative feedback or a limit, then what's going to happen is that we're going to get out of balance, and that's with everything. It's with our life. If we have too much of a good thing, okay, I mean, everybody likes ice cream, right? Well, if you ate ice cream 3 times a day, 3 meals a day, and that's all you ate is ice cream, it wouldn't be long before your body would push back, right? It'd probably begin to fall apart. So the idea of negative feedback or the law of limits is crucial, and that's one of the things that we need to teach our children so that it's embedded right into their fundamental thinking in terms of how they see the world. Don't fight negative feedback. When someone disagrees with you, listen to them. Nobody's smart enough to be right or wrong all the time. So there's always truth on both sides of every issue. Teach our children now to look for the truth on the other side, because that might be the feedback that's needed for us to move forward on a path that is balanced and stable. Okay? And right now, we're kind of out of balance in our politics. Okay, next point. Economic system. Right now, it's broken. Why? Because there is no effective feedback system at work. Now, some people are going to say, well, yeah, there's a feedback that if we don't want something, in other words, we won't buy it. If it's not made right, we won't buy it. I'm talking about something a lot more fundamental than that. I'm talking about the whole concept that our economic system is based on is greed and unlimited economic expansion. Okay? And of course, what we're talking about here, now we want to teach our children the concept of mutual benefit, okay? Not greed and unlimited economic expansion for ourselves. Why? Because even if we took a 1 or 2% growth, and we hear this every place all the time, well, this company grew 2%, or our economy grew 2%, or our unemployment grew. Well, that's not true, because 2% on 2% on 2% on 2%, and pretty soon we're headed straight up for infinity. So our economic system is based on personal greed, and it doesn't have the feedback systems that it needs. And as a result, progress is called unlimited economic expansion. We have to teach our children that's a dangerous, dangerous myth. If we continue unlimited economic expansion, well, we probably aren't going to have a future that we're going to want to live in, because that economic expansion that's unlimited is going to cause massive problems. Already is. A lot of the world is already experiencing the feedback now that nature is kicking in, and that's called global climate intensification. Okay, the only thing that nature is doing is trying to bring things back into balance with negative feedback. We want to teach our kids the concept of mutual benefit. Every single thing on our planet needs to benefit from the economic system. You can't have people who are hungry. You can't have people who are starving to death. You can't have people who are have no access to the resources that we're extracting from our planet unlimitedly, okay? And our planet is a fragile place. If our future generations are going to have any of those resources, we better slow down a little bit, right? All right, again, this is what we want to teach our children. The whole concept of mutual benefit, because unless we have mutual benefit, we're going to have hungry people, starving people, people who have no hope. And people with no hope who are starving to death, guess what? They can be pretty dangerous. Okay, and we're seeing that all over the world today. All right, big idea number 4. We teach kids and ourselves how things work. Okay, our science is strong. We really know a lot about how the universe and how electrons and atoms and all the rest of the stuff work. What we're not looking at and what we're not teaching our children is what about the relationships between things, okay? We're not doing such a good job there. For example, what's the relationship between our children and a tree? Our children need to understand that, because if they don't understand how a tree is, how they're dependent and very intimately interdependent on a tree, then why would they protect that tree? Okay? Same thing with the forest. If they don't understand the relationship with the forest and the fact that the forest is capturing carbon and putting it in the ground so that our system stays in balance, that's part of the negative feedback, okay? They don't understand oceans and how they're connected to all of that, the acidification of the oceans, our rivers, and the cleanliness of the water. They got to see the relationship. And a big one, a huge one right now, is the simple honeybee. Reality, if we don't understand our relationship with honeybees and get our relationship in right relationship with a honeybee, we're in big trouble. Some high percentage, probably 90% of our food is the direct result of honeybees at work. Children need to see that. They need to understand how important these relationships are. The relationship between them and another person. Now, I'll get to that in a second. But basically the thing that we're going to be teaching our children is how things relate to one another, okay? And if we can teach that, now again, we've got to learn those lessons ourselves, then we can teach them how to change the way they think, okay? Final point, this is the big one. We all grow up, and most people in the world are deeply embedded in this concept, and it is the extremely dangerous illusion. And that is that I, me, myself, is totally and uniquely separate from all other things. I am a separate self. The problem with that is that it creates a thinking called us versus them. And all of the thems become other. So for example, we look at the planet. It's an it. It's other. It's just a planet. We don't see that it's a living, breathing, alive planet nurturing us every single moment of our lives. We wouldn't be here without the Mother Earth, okay? If Mother Earth isn't working right, we're in big trouble. So if the more we can teach our children that they're not separate selves, it isn't all about us versus them. That's the source, by the way, of greed. And when we start thinking about other, we create judgment, we create conflict, okay? Because remember, others are going to push back. They're going to be part of the negative feedback that we need. And what will happen is it creates a lot of violence and conflict. Another, and it isn't just the judgment, it's the conflict and violence that comes from the other. But more importantly, in the 20th century, this concept, I am a separate being and everything else is them or other, it gave us permission to be blind to the fact that we slaughtered 100 million people in the 20th century. And we don't even think about it. We don't really care about it. Why? Because they're other. We don't know them. So what if they die? Now, what we need to begin teaching our children is the concept of we, the collective we, and the idea that we are intimately connected with all of those other people. Those other people are our brothers and sisters. They're other human beings. They're other people with lives and families and desires and fears and all the rest. They're real people. They're not just others. Okay? So if we can begin to teach our children how intimately connected they really are with all of the rest of the universe, then the whole concept of other begins to drop away, and they don't think of themselves as a separate being. They begin to see themselves as connected in this community of life. Okay? So, what we're doing, and this is the most important change that we can teach our children, to change how we think about ourselves as independent, separate I's, driven by what's in it for me, or greed, and help them begin to move over to we thinking, to see themselves as part of the collective living beings on the planet. Mutual benefit. We can't extract all the resources of the planet for our own benefit. It has to be for the benefit of every single human being on the planet and every other living creature on the planet, all the other species. Okay? So, what we're teaching our children, and this nugget is about that, is we're teaching them how to change the way we think, because how we think does matter. Okay? Make sense? All right. This is an article. It's got a lot of depth in it, but I really encourage you to think about it from the standpoint of what are we educating our children. Okay? It's a different way to think about things. All right? If this is helpful for you, please consider forwarding or sending it on to other folks, other friends, so that they can read it also. Okay? And if you do, thank you for supporting the work that we do here at Stony Hill, both the articles and the videos. Okay, have a good week. We'll see you down the road.